You're all very welcome back to the Celtic Soul Podcast. I'm Andrew Milne, and this is episode number 58. My guest on the show today will be David Lowe. We spoke to David back in January about the Celtic Trust and his part in the takeover of Celtic with Fergus McCann back in the mid-1990s. He joins us again today to talk about the current state of play at Celtic and to bring us up to date with the recent meeting between the Celtic Trust and the Celtic PLC. As I said, back in January, we spoke about the takeover and his years working alongside Fergus McCann. And we also asked him why he has now got involved with the Celtic Trust. And we also chatted about his life following Celtic and how important the role of Celtic fans is and the role they must play now in the future direction of Celtic Football Club. If you haven't listened to that episode and our first conversation with David, give it a listen. It's episode number 49. If you're a Celtic-minded business or a Celtic supporters club and you like what we are doing with the podcast and across all our independent Celtic fan media platforms and you would like to sponsor an episode or sponsor the fanzine, please email us at info@celticfanzine.com or contact us through the website or social media. Apologies again to our listeners in Cuba, Iran, Syria and North Korea, where the last 2 episodes of the podcast have been banned. If you're a listener or a reader or a listener and a reader, you can support our independent Celtic media platform by visiting celticfanzine.com, where you can become a member, a subscriber, you can buy some of our merchandise or a fanzine, or you can donate for the price of a pint. Your support helps us to continue to produce quality independent fan journalism, the fanzine, the podcast, video content and fan events. Keep the comments and suggestions coming in for guests who you would like us to have a chat with on the Celtic Soul Podcast. And here's a few comments we received since the last pod. Well, the second part of the Celtic Soul Podcast with Peter Houghton and Andrew Milne certainly didn't disappoint. Absolutely brilliant. I feel like Andrew has introduced me to a new friend and someone I admire. We could all do it 10 or 15 minutes of Peter once a month. Absolutely class. And that comes in from Kieran Bell. Quality listening, Millish. Peter Houghton is certainly a passionate fan, musician and citizen. He didn't like the jumper tuck dinner session though, and that comes in from Frankie Boy on Twitter. Great podcast, really enjoyed it, and I have the utmost respect for the Farm's Peter Houghton for sharing his still raw feelings on Hillsborough, and that comes in again on Twitter from Ray Cooley. Peter Houghton was an absolutely brilliant guest. So enjoyable, Andrew. Could listen to him all day. Keep them coming. And thanks for the fanzine as well. Such a great read. That comes in from Carl Biggins Slater on Twitter. Carl, thanks very much for buying the fanzine. Just finished listening. So glad I waited till I had the 2 parts together. I honestly could have listened to you both for another few parts. Great listen. However, that's not surprising as they are all great, Andrew. Thanks, Andrew and Peter, for your time. All the best. Hail, hail. You never walk alone. And that comes in from Mark McGinley. Hi Andrew, hope all is well with you. Excellent 2-part podcast with Peter Houghton. Very informative and what a character. Love the clash stories and the Ballock Chippy. Poignant memories of Hillsborough. I remember when Liverpool came up and I was in the jungle that day with my mates when the fans ran round the track with the Liverpool flag at half time. Stay safe and keep up the fantastic work, pal, and hope one day soon we'll all be back in paradise. Hail, hail, and that comes from Alan McDonald. Hilly says, all day listening, top interview. And Joe Heron finishes off with, just finished listening to the Peter Houghton interview. Fantastic stuff. Thanks, Joe. And last weekend's long read on CelticFanzine.com from David Potter was on Dixie Deans and his career. And this was the pick of the comments about that article. Dixie was working part-time in the Golden Pheasant Hotel in Linwood when he received a call from Jock Stein. It was my dad who answered the phone. Dixie originally thought my dad was taking the piss when he said Jock Stein was on the phone asking for him. And that came in from Peter Keeney. Peter, great little story there. I can just imagine if it was now, there'd be agents, directors of football, advisors, chairmen, all involved. Football seemed a bit more real back then. Folks, keep the comments coming in. And again, keep all the suggestions coming in for guests. And thanks for listening and reading. Oh dear, the mainstream media in Scotland are doing somersaults over Celtic's refusal to mention the words Old Firm. There is no Old Firm. Get over it. And then we had all this bollocks about guards of honour. The Scottish media need to get over themselves and their obsession with the new club and Stephen Gerrard. Celtic may be in a transition period, but we will be back and we will continue our successful, unbroken history since 1888. We paid our tax. We never let our club die. I know the new club fans and the biased media have trouble with the difference between both clubs, but then again, they need to get over it too. Who better than Billy McNeil to grace the cover of the latest issue of More Than 90 Minutes as we celebrate our unbroken history. 2 9-in-a-rows and a quadruple treble. While our 9-year-old neighbours struggle to understand basic maths, Billy McNeil won more in 1 month than the Newco have won in 9 years. History, maths and social distance studies need to be explained to the Newco fans. Time to kick back, boys, tomorrow and restore some pride in the jersey. Stop the new club and their unbeaten league run and put a marker down for the Scottish Cup. David Lowe is chair of the Celtic Trust. He's a Celtic fan and has been lucky enough to enjoy not 1 but 2 9-in-a-rows and see Celtic reach 2 European finals and indeed enjoy the recent quadruple treble. He was involved with Fergus McCann back in 1994 when the Rebels won and the old board was ousted. He was a consultant at Celtic during the McCann years, which saw Celtic Park redeveloped and Celtic stop Rangers doing 10 in a row. Hi David, you're very welcome back onto the Celtic Soul Podcast.
Fantastic to be here, yeah.
We spoke to you back in early January and in such a short time, so much has happened at Celtic. We have surrendered the title to Rangers without much of a defence. Neil Lennon has left his position as manager. Peter Lawell has announced that he will retire from his position and step down in the summer. And Celtic have appointed a new CEO who will come in the summer, Dominic McKay.
So, yeah, I mean, since I last spoke to you, Andrew, all those things have happened. All our sort of hopes and dreams, for the season have come crashing down around us. None of us saw it coming, be it supporters, board members, players, manager, coaches. Everything that could go wrong has gone wrong. It's been a truly disastrous season, and disastrous in such an important season. So there's no sugarcoating it. It's just been awful. I can't say any more than that.
Well, I think most of us are in agreement with you. All our dreams were shattered come, I suppose, that day in Ibrox and then what followed in Dubai, and it's been a long winter in lockdown. So listen, yourself and Jeanette Finley, representing the Celtic Trust, had a meeting with Celtic CEO Peter Lawell, Financial Director Chris McKay and Supporters Liaison Officer John Paul Taylor. Now, the reason I wanted you on the podcast is because we need get an insight for the listeners into, that meeting, what was said and what was not said.
Well, what the Trust said at the meeting was basically dictated by what our members instructed us to say. So, yeah, we were instructed by our members to relay to Celtic that, we're very unhappy with the performance of the management team and the directors, everybody that's in the building, so to speak, charged with running the club, must bear some responsibility. Not everybody understands the structure, and so I'll maybe spend 1 minute explaining, how the football club works. There's Celtic PLC, which has got, off the top of the head, 25,000 shareholders. A shareholder is an owner. So there's 25,000 owners of Celtic PLC. Some of them are big owners, like Dermot Desmond and a few others. Some of them are very small owners. Indeed, there's a huge number of Celtic supporters with one share only, probably in a picture, on a frame, on a wall. But they are all owners of Celtic, and they all have rights and an opinion. And just about all of them, of course, will be supporters in the sort of conventional definition of the word. But Celtic PLC, the company that's listed on the stock exchange, has a wholly owned subsidiary called, the Celtic Football and Athletic Company Limited. And ultimately, it's the directors of the PLC that are responsible for the running of the club. They get all the plaudit when things are going swimmingly well. And, they must also take the criticism when things go very wrong. So why did I say that? I said it to put where we find ourselves in context. The buck stops at the top, and criticism of the Celtic board when things don't go well is valid. and it's done in every quoted company on the stock exchange, of which Celtic PLC is a member of, and therefore criticism of the board is legitimate. Why did I say that again? Because they don't like it, but they've got to hear it, and that's where the responsibility for this lies. They appointed the coach, they appointed the director of football, they decided who's in the technical area, they authorised the transfers, and that is an explanation for people that are perhaps not aware of where responsibility lies. However, directors don't play football for 90 minutes on a football pitch. Players do, and it's 11 against 11, and those two teams have managers, so dictating tactics and telling players when they should be substituted, etc. So they must bear responsibility as well, and that's where most fans direct criticism, and that is legitimate as well. So it's a team game, it's a club game. We're all in this together. Criticism where criticism is due, praise where praise is due. This year is going wrong, and soul searching is required. And we articulated the views of our members in that vein. We're unhappy about the constitution of the board, the staleness of the board, the duration that very many non-executive directors have been there for. And, we made that point very strongly. And Celtic undertook, I would say, to listen to what we're saying and consider what we're saying. Of course, there were a number of other issues as well, but the big one was the trust I'm talking about, unveiling of our proposal on how to compensate supporters who supported the club and didn't get very much in return other than a £90 match feed every 2 weeks. So that was made, and I've lost my timeline. It must be best part 4 weeks ago. That proposal was made, and for the benefit of your listeners on this podcast, the Celtic Trust has formally proposed in a professional setting that the board of Celtic consider offering season ticket holders, ordinary season ticket holders, the option of receiving shares in the club as a means of value, which they undertook to look into when they spoke to representatives of the supporters and put out a press release on the 23rd of June saying they would do precisely that. So those season tickets were sold, when you read all the literature that came out of Celtic at the time, sold in the enthusiasm and the back of the pursuit of a 10 in a row. We all bought into it. We all supported it to a man, 50,000, and women, 50,000 of us. And we didn't really see it. Well, we didn't see any games at Celtic Park. So fair's fair. The objective here is to create the conditions to sell another 50,000 season tickets for the new challenge when the league season starts for 21-22. And we think and let's be clear, stadia will not be full. If we sell 50,000 season tickets, there's not going to be available seats in Celtic Park for 50,000 people. So supporters that are shelling out in excess of £500 per game, if the prices are the same, will not be able to sit in that seat they've bought for every match that takes place. So what our proposal was seeking to do is to create, a positive dynamic for the support, working in conjunction with the club, which basically encourages fans, supporters to buy season tickets for next season. And of course, for Celtic to honour the pledge. Pledge is distinct from commitment, because it wasn't a commitment. It was more of a pledge. There is a difference to those fans. It's also notable that hospitality season ticket holders, and I personally fall into both categories because I've got hospitality as well as regular season tickets I've had for as long as we've been back at Celtic Park. Hospitality season ticket holders have been offered the option as distinct from a straightforward no other alternatives, the option of a cash refund. So we think it's important that we retain as much cash in the club as possible, and that people who are entitled to a cash refund receive benefits that doesn't cost the club cash. It costs the club shares. So that's a good thing, because it keeps cash in the club It encourages and promotes season ticket sales for the new challenge, and the new manager is going to need as much money as possible because it looks like a big team rebuilding is required. And of course, what it would do is bring a whole new generation of younger Celtic fans into the club as shareholders. The share ratio is over 25 years ago. Most shareholders are of a certain vintage now, and there's a whole lot of young folk, that don't have a share of the club and don't really know how to easily go about acquiring a share or an ownership position in their club. So it's just a whole bunch of ticks. I don't see any real reason why that proposal that we made at that meeting you referred to should not be seriously considered as a good idea. It should not be also, and I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be considered as a very positive option that's been presented to the club. Since we made the proposal, we have had an acknowledgement from the company secretary saying that the proposal was with the chairman and is being considered. So we don't know what will happen. We shall all wait and see.
I think the suggestion is a really good one because, as you said, it keeps the cash in the club, and a new manager, whoever that may be, will need cash. But it's also, as you say, giving younger supporters, a chance to own a piece of Celtic. I think now, and I think he's played a blinder in this because the way it's gone out and the way it has been received, because it has been the big talking point from that meeting by both members of the trust and non-members of the trust. And, as usual on social media, which can be a swamp at times, we had negative. I honestly believe that some of these people, no matter what you come up with, that they just will not be happy, no matter what manager it is or what the Celtic Trust does or whatever.
Yeah.
But do you believe that, because now it's now with the chairman, it would be a huge own goal if they didn't accept the proposal or come back with a proposal for season ticket holders? Because, as you said, there's not going to be 60,000 people in Celtic Park next year with the way the pandemic is. We hope there will be people back in. But even from my perspective in Ireland, because we're in the EU now, the travel will be difficult for me to get over to Glasgow as it currently stands and going forward. So for me to shell out again, it is it's a question that is doing the rounds on all the WhatsApp groups in supporters clubs. Are you going to renew because of the uncertainty, and probably as well because the way the season went this year, and a lot of people, me included, believe that both the media department and the PR department let us down, this season. But going forward, I think this could be, it's not going to unite us all because at the moment we're a divided support. But I do believe it could be a step in the right direction for going some way to unite the fans and those who run the club.
Well, I don't disagree with any of that, but it's important to emphasise that all the proposal is a proposal to give season ticket holders the option, just another option to take up shares. There are other options available. The club could opt to give season ticket holders nothing, and they're entitled to do that because I don't believe there's any firm legal commitment to offer to give a refund, if you want to call it that, to season ticket holders. But I don't think it's the fine detail of the law that's the important thing here. It's creating a positive dynamic, because I do not think Celtic would sell as much season tickets as they could if they took a look. If they just tried to say, we're all in this together, we need your support again, step up. We can't give you any refunds, and here, buy a season ticket for 21-22, and you might not be able to sit in the seat every 2 weeks for the season. I don't really think that's a sensible or a plausible option. It is an option, but I don't think it's a good one, because I think that option would be detrimental to Celtic. That would be bad for Celtic, and we don't want that. Nobody that supports Celtic wants bad things for Celtic. What we have is differences of opinion on what's good for Celtic. So I think what we're proposing is good for Celtic. Keeps money in the club, provides more money for the manager, introduces a new young breed of Celtic supporters, and that's just the things I can remember. There's other positives as well. I think offering nothing is bad for Celtic, and offering cash is bad for Celtic because that's a massive hemorrhage out the club. So I don't want cash. I want to support Celtic. But the other thing to remember is we're all different. We've got all got different levels of wealth, personal wealth. Some can afford things more than others. Some need cash more than others. Some don't need any cash. Some are quite happy to leave the money in the club. The point is, in recognition of all those differences of status and opinions, we have just presented another option. There are more options. I would have liked to have offered fans, things like a digital crypto token or an NFT, a non-fungible token, which is sort of pretty far out there, but there's not enough time to develop that. That's another way of giving value, but we're probably a season too early for that. So the board's got to be looking at these different options as well. And the Celtic Trust playing a role there. We're coming up with options to help Celtic, support Celtic. And anything we do and anything we say should be viewed in that light as good and positive for Celtic.
I believe it could be a deal maker for people to renew their books. And you said there, you did touch on it, that, people have different financial incomes and, cash flows. But I do think that if they can do what's morally right, in my opinion, and be seen by the fans to be reaching out and saying, yeah, this is a suggestion that has come from the fan base. We could, and it's a good option. And I don't see a cash option this year. I just, especially in the current climate, I don't see it. But another thing that was spoken about at the meeting, David, you might be able to tell us a bit about, because when I was looking at the minutes, European football. Now, it looks to me that we're heading to a Super League in Europe with maybe a second tier. These are changes I'm hearing about through whispers, and I'm also, hearing that, there's big clubs in Europe who are in financial dire straits, and this is their get-out clause. Was that discussed in any detail at the meeting?
It wasn't discussed in any great detail, and I'm just making sure I get this right. What Peter Lawell said was that there may well be some announcements relatively soon. Soon was deemed to be within a month or two, about changes in the status quo, which was clearly means the league structures. So I independently of that, I'm aware of these moves. I do believe that COVID, or the coronavirus, has accelerated a series of changes that were always going to take place throughout European football, and it's brought it to the fore, and that changes are imminent, changes in league structures, cross-country, more cross-country participation at the expense of domestic participation. This has come to pass. There have been some announcements and there will be more. And I have to say, Celtic are in Europe a well-respected club. Celtic are represented in the European Club Association boards. I think Peter Lawwell's a director. I don't know how that will change if Peter leaves the board, but he may stay on the board. I don't know. That's been left unstated. All that's said is that he's stepping down as chief executive. I don't know if it actually said if he's resigning as a director, but he is on the board of the ECA, given the fact, and because he is a Celtic director. So we are respected at the jurisdictional level because we've had a stable board, which is the plus of having a well-run club over recent years, financially I'm talking about, and financially only. So there are changes taking place there. The other thing that COVID's done is actually decimated the balance sheets of clubs right across Europe because of fans have not been able to attend games. The Scottish League is overly dependent on a match day income and discretionary spend, burgers, programmes, cokes, Bovril pies, etc. So we're in the fortunate position that we entered this with a strong balance sheet, cash in the bank, a big borrowing facility with a co-op. But all of that's getting eroded with the outflow of cash because of the lack of match day revenues. And that can't last forever. So our strong economic economic advantage over the other team, the other club in the city, or the other big club in the city is eroding. And of course, I have no idea what's happening with them and money, but it can't be good. But that trend is across Europe. Clubs are losing a lot of money, and I think there's a trend to raise capital. I think a lot of clubs are already raising capital from their owners and their shareholders. The guy at Everton, Mr. Moshiri, has just put another £200 million worth of equity into Everton, for example, to shore up their balance sheet and remove debt. Yesterday or the day before, Bruges in Belgium, which is a very similarly sized or positioned club to Celtic, announced plans to come to the stock exchange, with a value of about £200 million. So there's already moves taking place amongst the larger clubs to what's called recapitalise, have a cash infusion, issue more shares. And indeed, even putting the Trust's proposal to one side, I wouldn't rule out the possibility of Celtic having a share issue. They haven't had one since 2005, and I think that was to largely pay debt and to finance Lennox Town. So there may well be a share issue at Celtic, who knows? So it's a time of great change. It's a time of great difficulty. And it's a time to be supporting your football club. And in our instance, that's Celtic. So we're trying to help Celtic with our proposal.
Yeah, while I was enjoying the St. Patrick's Day festivities and the horse racing yesterday, I did get a message in from a friend, and he said that the Dutch League and the Belgium League were to merge. Now I haven't read anything, but that's a kind of an interesting take on. Obviously, there are some big clubs in Holland, there are some big clubs in Belgium, and if they merge, there'll also be the losers who will lose out in that. But I don't see anyone queuing up to merge with Scotland.
Well, it might not even be Scotland. It just might be some teams in Scotland. Who knows? The Belgian-Dutch proposal, it's a proposal. It's not a fait accompli. It has still to surmount quite a lot of hurdles. And for every winner, there's a loser that doesn't want it to happen. And usually when you want change in football, some money has to change hands, to make it happen. This happened in England in 1992 when the Premier League left the Football League. And that was all about creating a bigger cake, financial cake, to cut it into fewer slices. And it was all going to court. And then at the last minute, the Premier League offered the Football League some money. Money changed hands, and a financial parachute, etc. And the deal happened. The same thing happened in Scotland in 1998. When the SPL, as it was then, left the SFL, and that was the same thing. We're doing it. The other side says, no, you can't. Yes, you can. No, you can't. Then some money changes hands, and it happens. So it's money that talks. It's money that changes the status quo. And, the same will happen. Will have to happen if Belgium and Holland are to merge their leagues, or if Celtic and Rangers are there. I mentioned the name. Darn, I was determined not to. So, can you erase that bit? No, don't bother. I'm only kidding. Dan, you caught me out. Anyway, they're definitely not the old firm though, so don't worry about it. When you want to, when there's a casualty that comes from change, money has to change hands. But this is the mood music that's going on just now. The COVID has accelerated change, changes in ownership, changes in balance sheet, capitalizations, share issues, the whole 9 yards. Everything's up for change, up for grabs. And, we being Celtic, want to be there or thereabouts. We want to be on the right side of the deal. We want to be moving forward, and we want to get back on the tracks again. And we want to do what we can to help.
Yeah, and there is two clubs that are supposed to be in trouble, is Real Madrid and Barcelona. And when you look at the size of them, and if they're struggling financially, and as you say, COVID has accelerated it, it's the super rich league is what these clubs want. And even looking at the Champions League now, it only gets interesting in the last 8. because the gap is so far between some of the teams in the group stages now. Now, I know it's great for teams to get into those group stages, but as a product and for people willing to buy into it, I think we will be looking at this kind of super European league or whatever. And I suppose as Celtic and Celtic fans, we'd rather be pissing inside the tent than outside the tent.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the challenge. We are a big club with a global fan base. We are respected. We don't tear cities up when we visit them. People like us. So, yeah, I think we're there or thereabouts. And that would be, just for me anyway, ever so exciting if we could, start playing a lot more games away from bonny Scotland, because I don't think it's a healthy environment. I don't think we get a straight back, with some of the authorities here. But maybe that's a podcast for another day.
Yeah, you're talking like I'm talking as a football fan. Everyone loves a European away day. Everybody. The whole build-up to travelling, having a few drinks, seeing a new city. Generally, we're beaten, but we had that fabulous win in Rome last year. But can I take your football fan hat off? And as a financial person with the background you have, how beneficial would a European league? Because we keep talking about, we've heard about the Phoenix League, we've heard about Super Leagues, we've heard about us joining the Premier League, we've heard about us, going through the structure of the league in England, walking our way up. All kind of pipe dreams. But are we getting now? Is it getting now? Because is COVID kind of accelerated that we will get to play on a bigger stage? And financially, how will that impact us?
Well, as I said, COVID, I think, is accelerating changes. What we've grown up with, what we're used to, I think is going to get challenged. Now, for example, we're stuck in Scotland, which is a small jurisdiction, a small footprint with a small TV audience. So, yeah, there's not a lot of competition. We are the biggest team, and we with the most money, and we should win the league most years. But at the end of the day, because we don't have the television money, that little teams have in big leagues that makes them financially bigger than Celtic, with a lot less fans, they've got that benefit, and it's making life difficult for, like Celtic, Porto, Ajax, who are like similar large fish in small ponds. So for somebody like me, that started watching Celtic in 1966, just when all the good things domestically and in Europe were taken off, I don't find my benchmark for Celtic is what happens in Europe. And I don't like, what Celtic this position that Celtic have found themselves in Europe, because we just get humped every year more often than not. And it's because the jump up, the chasm between the money and the jump up is getting larger and larger. So, I said like 10 years ago, winning the Scottish League is a license to get knocked out at the European qualifier rounds. And, that's happening as we speak. So it's now rare for Celtic, to get into the Champions League latter stages. It's happened a couple of times in the last 10 years. I can't remember the exact number. So it's very difficult. But, Porto, perform better than Celtic, as do other contemporaries. So there are things that we're doing wrong. And that's, I'm not a football manager, so I'm not qualified to talk about that. But some of our biggest humpings took place under Brendan Rodgers. Let's be clear about that. So I don't think it's fair to sort of pin it in any one manager like it is just now with Neil Lennon. There's some serious humpings taking place, over the years with different managers. I think it's a structural problem, more likely than not. I think I think we've squandered a lot of money in the transfer market. I think our recruitment needs looked at, and maybe we are getting a new director of football as well as a new chief executive. So these changes are good, because what's been happening recently has not been good. So it's a period of great change, and hopefully there are changes for the better, and hopefully we can get back to being top dogs again pretty quickly. And hopefully, we'll all be able to sing from the same hymn sheet and focus on the positive rather than all this horrible negative energy that's that's in the air just now. It's not good.
Yeah, and when you were on the podcast a couple of months ago, you spoke about how players' heads had been turned for the riches of England, which is nothing new, because David Potter was in the podcast and he went back to when Kane Dalglish was sold, and he said that was the day he knew that the board hadn't the ambition to compete in Europe anymore, that they couldn't hold on to, this player. And he proved right. But, within a couple of years, we went in the latter stages, and then we went in after Christmas, so it's not a new thing. And the gulf is just massive. And the appointment of a new manager isn't going to change that. But was the manager discussed at this meeting?
Yeah, it was discussed in the general context. It's always wrong to personalise what's going wrong too much. It was a review. The Celtic board says there is a review taking place of whatever it was, football operations. And we said, yeah, that's great. We await the outcome of that. But we are authorised by our members to tell you that we want a review of the board structure and operations, because we're not happy about that either. So I don't know if they will, but we certainly told them that's what our members would like. To go back to the players, though, it's as old as the hills. Celtic, since I've been watching them, I remember selling Lou Macari, Kenny Dalglish, Davy Hay, Brian McClare. You can go right through all the different cycles all up to now. And you can get away with it because money always talks, and playing football is a short career. And even the biggest Celtic fan, if the money jump is big enough, will get it, because once you're 35, your earnings plummet unless you're trained to do something else, or you want to be in coaching, which is a precarious profession. So all football clubs can manage change if it's in an orderly manner. What's different with foreign football players that everybody forgets is that they're not in Glasgow because they love the Celtic. They're there as a stepping stone into the Premier League, and they are sold that. That's the gig they're sold. Come to Celtic, be a star, do well, and you'll get your move. And, that's what happens. That's the gig. And again, if that's done in an orderly manner and in a staged manner, that works out well. That's what happened with just more recently, or not recently, but Hoydonk, Decanio, what's his name, Cadet, and there's lots of other players that come to Celtic for that reason. Wanyama is another one, Dembele is another one, and again, you can manage it. But see, when they all come on like a corporation bus, 6 of them at the same time, and they don't get what they want, then you've got a problem. And that's what's happened to Celtic this season. I'd say, and I'm not claiming any special inside knowledge, but I can say with a degree of confidence that half our team wanted away in down tools, and I don't think there's a single player that performed to his potential this season. I can't think of one. I can think of one guy that tried his heart out every time he plays for Celtic, and that's I've forgotten his name, so he couldn't have played that well. The Scotland left back, what's his name? He's temporarily forgotten his name. Greg Taylor. He tries his heart out every game, and that's a fantastic attitude to have. But all our French guys are just down tools. I wouldn't sign a Frenchman. And then they're all like Nicholas and Elka. There's no loyalty. They kiss badges. They don't mean it. They don't try. And they just want away when it suits them. And I think you can see that in the park. There's a few more homegrown guys that think they're big dicks and didn't play to their potential, running down their contract. Factor in a few awful signings. I mean, for God's sake, who's responsible for that goalkeeper? I mean, come on. Who's responsible for that? I don't want to personalise it, so stop. There's been some horrendous decisions made this season, and you can see that in the results. I can't think of a single game, apart from maybe the Rangers game that we lost, where we have played to our potential for 90 minutes. It's everything that could go wrong has gone wrong this season. So maybe it's bad luck, but some of it's our own fault. It's a mixture of both.
I don't think any fans will deny that the players have had dreams above their stations this year. And as you say, when there's so much unrest within the squad, and that wouldn't have helped. The new players didn't certainly help themselves with the performances, but it wouldn't have helped them either coming into that kind of environment where the best players are wanted now.
I'm not sure what you mean, but, if you're talking about COVID and empty stadiums and lack of atmosphere, every club's got that. So that's not unique to Celtic. And if you're a professional and you are a good player, you should be able to cope with that. So if I'm looking at Edouard and saying, God, he's not a patch on what he was the previous season or the season before that, I'm not putting it down to the fact that there's no fans in the arena or the stadium. I'm not putting it down to any other factor than he doesn't really want to be there. And he has decided consciously or unconsciously that he's not giving his best. Because he's been ranked some games this season. And Cham, who's away, hasn't kicked a ball for, I don't know, since he scored a goal in Rome. And I think he might have been a sub that game. Rogic is not a patch from the player that he was years ago. And, pretty sure he wants away. These guys underperforming are not to do with coaching. That's the manager get the blame for that. What about the tactics and all that? The players have down tools. It's the players that play on the pitch. It's the players that score the goals or give away the goals. It's not the board. It's not the manager. It's not the coaching. It's not the tactics. It's basically players don't want to be there. That's what it is this season. It's not always the case every season when a team underperforms. But this season, there's a league table of reasons why we were crap this season. And top of that league table, in my opinion, and it is only an opinion, is because of the players. The point I'm making, David, is when a player comes into a team, if he came into that team, and the likes of Edward and all the players were saying, right, this is the most, as they come in, this is the most important season. We'll go for 10 in a row. This is, they buy into that. But if they come into a dressing room and it's, well, I want away, I'm going the first chance I get. I don't want to play. So, it may affect players that come in. That's the point I was making. Right, so top of the list is the players. In my opinion. It doesn't mean I'm right. I'm just saying that's my opinion.
And we know there's going to be a lot of players moving out this year because it's inevitable.
Something because they don't want to be there or they're just no good. But, they're just... there's some horrendous decisions being made. Is Barkas, a $4.5 or a £5 million goalkeeper? I don't think so. But is he going to turn it round? Is he going to gain confidence and be a world beater? Is he going to be as good as Fraser Foster? I don't think so. I don't know if he wants to be here. It's all going wrong for him. No, it's all bad. It needs a clean sweep. It needs a complete restructuring throughout the football department. In my opinion, it was awful.
The last time you were on, David, as well, you said that the board were too comfortable, they were there too long. Have you softened on that point, or do you think that more will follow Peter Lawell out the door?
I think there will be change. And when I say I mean, it's the trust view. It's also my personal view. There are 4 non-executive directors that have been there for over 9 years. That's at odds with the quoted company alliance guidelines for what's acceptable. So, that's not good governance. You're supposed to refresh your board, and we haven't done that. And I do think it needs freshening up. It needs some new blood. It needs some new expertise. And, I think it's symptomatic. There is a staleness in the building. Peter had been there for 13 years, was it? That's an awful long time. I think this is an opportunity to deconstruct and reconstruct what's going on at Celtic, turn it into a positive. That's what we're trying to do. I'm very critical of the team. Just the last 10 minutes there. I don't like being critical. I don't like being negative. I don't like negative energy. I like focus on the positive. You can only get to the positive once you've passed the negative. There was a lot of negativity, 2, 3, 4 weeks ago when it dawned on us, what had exactly happened. But you've got to go over it at some point because you can't change it. And you've got to focus, you've got to look forward and focus forward. And that's what the Trust is doing. The Trust proposal, to go back to that, is positive. I'm not really looking backwards. I want us all to look forwards and to support the team and support the club. But I want the board to do that as well. I don't want our passion and our support taken for granted. It's a two-way street.
And one of the changes will be the new CEO, Dominic McKay. I don't know a lot about him. I tried to find out when he was appointed. Obviously, he comes with a decent CV. He's well respected within Scottish rugby. But, you're the man in the know. Tell us about Dominic McKay. Do you know much about him?
I don't know him at all. I've never been in his company, but I know people who have. I know I've got very good friends who have. One of my business partners is former president of the SRU, who has got an opinion. And another director friend is a big rugby guy. So let's be clear, he is a West of Scotland, Ayrshire guy. He does know what Celtic's all about. I understand he's a Celtic fan. Now listen, you can be a good CEO without being a Celtic fan. I mean, that's a controversial thing to say, but it's a true thing to say. You don't have to be a Celtic fan to be the Celtic CEO. Just in exactly the same way, you don't have to be a Celtic fan to play for Celtic. You just have to be good at your job. So, but the new guy is a Celtic fan, or so I'm told, which is a help. He knows what the Glasgow experience or the West of Scotland experience is all about. The pressures that come with it, both absolutely and relatively. So I don't think we've got a stranger coming to town that is going to get blinded by the headlights. So everything I've just said there should be construed as positive, but only time will tell. We've had 5 CEOs since 1994. Fergus was the CEO till he left in 99, and we all know about him. No prisoners with Fergus. Celtic for all. Next 2 guys didn't last long because they didn't get it. Alan MacDonald, Celtic man, but job wasn't for him. Ian McLeod didn't last long either. And then Peter came in, big Celtic fan, steadied the ship, and he's been there for ever since. So this is did I get that right? Fergus +2 plus. So this is the 5th guy. So these guys last an average of 5 years. So we'll see how he gets on. He deserves our support because he's got the job, and I wish him all the best. Indeed, anybody that gets any of the big positions deserve our support. So that includes the manager. I've no idea who the manager is. It could be anybody. We've all got our opinions, and again, the team that needs big rebuilding. So, time of great change. It's not good to have so many changes all at the same time, but it is what it is, and we've got to deal with it.
Yeah, it certainly is. Now, Celtic have struggled in the park this year, but the Celtic Trust has been successful in growing its numbers. What's the state of play now? Membership is up and our shareholding is up.
I've not asked what the membership is in the last few weeks, but it's certainly rising all the time. And when the membership rises, the cash flow rises, i.e. the money coming into the trust rises. And when that happens, we buy more shares in the club because that's our raison d'etre. So we actually bought some today. I think we might have 40,000 shares. Less than a year ago, we had a few hundred shares or something, or not very much. So our intention is to have up to 500,000 shares in the club. So we're 10% of the way there, and I think we'll get there. So all the numbers are growing, and a very important point: those shares are owned by the members equally. So when you become a member of the trust, you own on a one-for-one basis a part of the trust shareholding. It's democratic, one member, one vote, and you can have a say in who runs the trust every year. There's going to be an annual general meeting coming up at the end of next month, at which the accounts for the year will be presented to the members for approval. and there'll be nominations for positions on the trustee board of the Celtic Trust, and there may be changes. I might get sacked. Who knows? That's democracy, and I'm not in it for any other reason than I want Celtic to do well, and if it's the members of the trust want a new chairman, delighted. Let's go. Let's do it. So that's all coming up next month. So we'll see what happens.
Coming up a bit quicker than that is the visit of the new club to Celtic Park on Sunday. Now, you did say that it was probably our best performance before Ethan was sent off. I have to say, I'm kind of in a negative state when it comes to the players and the performances. How do we see this from panning out, David?
Well, you're forcing me to mention the name again. I'm trying. How do you talk about a game in the oblique? Look, they're patently having a good season. They've got stability. Let's call it for what it is. They haven't lost a domestic league game this season. They have a sort of stable structure and a stable formation, and they're winning or not losing when they're playing badly. So they're in a groove, and we're in a relative mess. Again, strong words, but true. So I don't think any Celtic fan is going to be watching this in their £90 a season feed, feeling a great degree of confidence. I'm certainly not, but at the end of the day, it is 11 against 11 for 90 minutes, so anything can happen. And I'm going for a 4-0 Celtic.
You just hit me up, and then that brings me on. That 4-0 win then will steer us on to a Scottish Cup run, and maybe we might just manage a trophy in Hampden by the end of the season.
Well, maybe some sort of pressure's off. Maybe there's some sort of change in the dynamic, has taken place. At the end of the day, it is 11 against 11 for 90 minutes. So let's not be too pessimistic. I want to make just a couple of more points, because the Trust did put out a statement tonight on two fronts. Number one, the Celtic Trust supports the football club in its desire to ask fans to stay away from the stadium on Sunday, not for any behaviour issues at all, but simply we're near to getting stadiums open in some fashion. We don't want to prejudice that with illegal gatherings or whatever the correct phrase is. We want to basically abide by the lockdown. Don't gather, and let's do our little bit for getting the lockdowns lifted and getting the stadiums open as soon as we can. So the Trust supports the statements that Celtic have made in that respect this week. In the same vein, we have asked Celtic, we do not want any of our players released for any international games at the end of the month. If UEFA or FIFA rules permit us to withhold players from the national squads, we want that done. We don't want our players, our employees, stepping out of a safe environment into a less safe environment, then getting treated shabbily by the SFA in the way that's happened in the past. So we have put out that statement tonight, and that's the position of the Trust. And if it can be done, we want our players withheld from international duty.
I just saw a tweet before we recorded the interview about that. Yeah, it's something maybe that should have been said a little earlier, and it's never too late to say these things. And yeah, we have been treated unfairly, I would say. When you look at the way other clubs have been treated, there seems to be one rule for some and another rule, COVID rule, because I'll only get depressed. Listen, before I let you go, David, the last time you were with me, you climbed into my time machine and you went back to a couple of games. But can you climb in this time and take us back to when you were walking within Celtic, and maybe you have a little gem for us?
Well, I can't think of anything off the top of the head about working in that building. Come on, the
Canio Cadetti van Hooydonk, Fergus.
No, I mean, when Fergus was there, he was His view was that the board, the financial people, stick to what they are experienced in and they do best. Fergus did not like, and they may even have insisted, that nobody in a suit, metaphorically speaking, should be anywhere near a dressing room or a technical area talking to football people about football things. What we should be doing is employing the best manager, the best director of football to do the job with, inverted commas, the football department. You shouldn't have guys in suits, hanging out with players in dressing rooms, talking, like one of the boys. You wouldn't have the players in a boardroom doing it the other way around. Now, I'm a great devotee of that principle. I don't like guys in suits meddling in football affairs at all. Football is a professional game, and the key decisions should be made by professionals with experience in the game, not by directors playing at being FIFA football managers. Now, that was a big thing with Fergus McCann when he was there, and I think that's a good thing, and I think that's been lost. I think there's people like playing at being football managers. Another thing that used to go on at Celtic in the 90s, and when I say Fergus McCann, you've got to remember that it was the whole board. It was maybe a couple of things that I can recall that Fergus McCann was outvoted on, because he was just one vote in a boardroom of 6 or 7 or how many there were at the time. But he always said we should always make the right decisions and let the PR people deal with the fallout, when it's an unpopular decision. And I believe that's a very sound thing as well. Don't make the wrong decision for the right reasons. Indeed, there was, and I'm not going to name the name, there was one guy that said, "Come on, Fergus, let's make the wrong decision for the right reasons." I had to think about that one. Let's make the wrong decision for the right reasons. No, I don't think so. So, it was tough back in the 90s, but it's a generation ago. I don't know if too many people want to be talking about that. It's all in the past. But I think that sort of, Fergus was, and is, I have to say, because I do speak to him regularly, hardline Celtic, by the way. It's Celtic or nothing, and he wasn't afraid to take on the SFA. The SFA screwed us over when we were renting Hampden, and we had to rebuild Celtic Park. They knew that we could go nowhere else, and they got their pound of flesh and charged us an exorbitant fee, and that wasn't forgotten. They tried to screw us over, the George Cadetti transfer, and of course Jim Farry paid the price for that. And I think there's still a vein in the SFA that have got it in for Celtic. And I do wish Celtic would stand up more, grow some balls, and they stand up to these people. And that's going to be my final comment, Andrew.
David, thank you so much for coming back onto the Celtic Soul podcast. It's been very interesting, and always I learned something, and I'm sure the listeners do, from getting an insight from within that meeting that was held at Celtic Park, because sometimes the club don't get the story out, but certainly now the Trust are getting theirs out, and as a member of the Celtic Trust, I hope we grow and grow and grow, and I hope everyone supports us and backs us. And as I said, David, thank you very much.
Thanks for your time. Speak to you again sometime. Bye.
Thanks to David for joining us again and bringing us up to date on the state of play at Celtic and the recent meeting between the PLC and the Trust. I think the Celtic Trust suggestion of offering shares to Celtic fans is very forward-thinking and a great approach as we enter another uncertain season due to COVID-19 restrictions. As season ticket holders, we will always remain customers in the eyes of the PLC, but as shareholders, we will become part owners of the club. More Than 90 Minutes, issue 114, print edition, will arrive from the printers on Monday, and you can order your copy now, and we'll stick one in the post Monday evening. If you can't wait till then, you can download the digital edition by visiting CelticFanzine.com. Thanks to all the contributors and to Richie for another quality design job. With no matchday sales, there would be no print edition without your support, so thanks very much for continuing to back the old school print edition. As always, thanks to Ronan McQuillan for producing the show. And if you like what we're doing and you would like to support us, you can do so at CelticFanzine.com, where you can become a member, a subscriber. You can buy some of our merch or a fanzine, or donate for the price of a pint. Visit our website for articles and news, and you can also sign up for our newsletter. Please download our app. It's free, and you'll then have access to all our podcasts, articles, news, video, info on upcoming events, the fanzine, and you can visit our online shop if you want to have a browse around and buy something. All at the touch of a button on your phone or tablet. All episodes of the podcast are now available on all platforms, including our YouTube channel. So hit that subscribe button, it costs nothing, or hit that follow button and you'll never miss an episode. And if you can, leave us a review. Please follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook and Twitter. Details are all in the podcast description. If your business or Celtic Supporters Club like the podcast and would like to become a sponsor, please email us at info@celticfanzine.com. You can also contact us, as always, through the website or message us on social media. If you enjoyed the conversation with today's guest, David Lowe, and would like to listen to more of the same, can I suggest episode 49, when David joined us for the first time on the podcast, following on from Celtic Trust stalwart Jeanette Finlay, who spoke to us back in episode 46, Celtic scout, former player, and youth coach at Celtic, Willie McStay, joined us back in episode 28 and 29 to talk about all things Celtic, and Paddy McMenamin also joined us for a two-parter when he opened up his Celtic Soul to us back in episodes 20 and 21. Paddy talked openly about his life and his love of Celtic and his life behind bars as a Republican prisoner. There will be no Celtic row to welcome the Celtic players onto the field tomorrow. We'll be watching from the comfort of our own homes, and we'll be hoping that we can get a much needed win and it gives us a big lift. Come on Celtic, get stuck into this mob. And for those lucky enough to be able to get together in bars in Australia or wherever you're allowed to have a few pints, I envy you. And I envy you having those few pints in good company with fellow fans. So folks, appreciate it, win, lose or draw. Each episode we lend our support to musicians and performers who have been hit the hardest by the lockdown restrictions with no gigs and no venues. We've had some great singers and poets on so far, so send your material to us and we'll give you a plug and play out of each show. Thanks for listening and supporting us. Stay safe folks and keep the faith. And this week we play out with our producer Ronan McQuillan and his friends with The Fields of Athenry. Folks, you can check that out. I'll put the link in for the video on YouTube. It's absolutely excellent. That will be in the podcast description, and maybe Ronan might tell us a little bit about the song and how they got together in these lockdown times.
Yeah, just to mention how this came about. So my cousin Laura lives in Nantucket in the United States, and she asked me to get involved with the Irish Rambles in Nantucket. They do this Bridge of Culture every year for St. Patrick's Day, where they get musicians and people involved in Nantucket to Irish it up for Paddy's Day. So she asked me to record The Fields of Athenry, and then she sent it round to different people around the world, and they all played on it. So my cousin, who lives in Nashville, she's singer-songwriter Claire Cunningham, she's singing on it. My cousin Christina Perkins is on it, she's playing the box, so you'll see all this in the video. And Stephen Powell's playing on it, he's down in Australia. And some other people from Vermont, Cape Cod, and yeah, Nashville. And this is it. Hope you enjoy.
By a lonely prison wall, I heard a young girl calling, Michael, they have taken you away, for you stole true valiant's cord, so the young might see the Lord. Now the prison ship lies waiting in the bay. Low lie the fields of Athenry, where once we watched the small free birds fly. Our love was on the wing, we had dreams and songs to sing. It's so lonely round the fields of Athenry. By a lonely prison wall, I heard a young man calling, against the fallen and the crown. I rebelled, they cut me down. Now you must raise our child with dignity. Low lie the fields of Athenry, where once we watched the small free birds fly. Our love was on the wing. We had dreams and songs to sing. It's so lonely round the fields of Athenry. By a lonely harbour wall, she watched the last star falling. As the prison ship sailed out against the sky, for she lived in hope and prayed for her love in Botany Bay. It's so lonely round the fields of Athenry. Oh, lie the fields of Athenry, where once we watched the small free birds fly. Our love was on the wing. We had dreams and songs to sing. It's so lonely round the fields of Athenry. It's so lonely round the fields of Athenry.